What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 3 great wide receiver route running tips that you guys can add to your game to make you a better overall wide receiver. We have not discussed some of this stuff that we're going to cover in this video in too much detail on this channel, so this will be new information to help your skills. So I hope it helps you out again, fellas, but also if you guys are looking for something a little bit more detailed on a day-to-day basis of how to structure your on-field workouts as a wide receiver, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. What you'll get access to is you'll get access to a 2-month daily schedule with the exact drills wide receivers should be doing, with sets, reps, and a video example of each drill for you guys. So check out that very first link below if interested, fellas. Let's get started. So now, first things first with this route here, this is going to be a crossover release, and you're going to be able to be running a slant route off of this. So the first tip to be a great route runner is you got to know how to get yourself outside of a DB's frame and threaten him. So let's play this full speed and then we'll break it down. So this receiver comes off, does this crossover move, and gets this DB to jump outside. So I'm going to play this thing again full speed one more time. So when you guys do any type of release off the line, you want to treat this DB like it is driving, right? So when you guys are driving, you're in a car. Obviously, like let's say you're in the middle lane, for example. The middle lane is where the DB is at. DB's in the middle lane, and we want to try to move him to the right lane. So to move him to the right lane, so I could get to the left lane, which is over here to the left side of us, I need to actually step to the right lane. You want to think of it as 3 separate lanes. DB's in the middle lane, we are trying to move him to the right lane. So the only way that we are going to get a disciplined DB, and every single DB in the NFL is disciplined, every single DB that's playing a high level of college football is probably on the more disciplined side. I'm not trying to get you ready for the DBs who are bad. I'm trying to get you ready for disciplined guys. So you have to step outside of his frame. So the first thing that we're covering is how you guys can actually do that. So this wide receiver is going to be doing something called a crossover move, right? So a crossover move, to not get confused, it's just pretty much a 1-2 off the line, or maybe you're closing the distance with the DB, then you do the 1-2, but you want to step in the direction that you are going first. So if you're trying to run a slant route, that's inside. So you want to step inside first. So you step with the left foot, and then you step with the right foot. We're trying to sell like I'm just doing a single jab to the inside and taking a release to the outside. That's what it has to look like. Now, like I said in the very beginning, we want to do that 1-2. We want to be quick about it. We want my feet to be sudden. But like I said, we need to step outside of his frame to get him to jump. Now, whenever I say step outside of the frame, people love to say, oh, well, you don't want to step outside of his frame. You want to keep everything inside of your frame. You want to step quickly so you could have balance. Because when you try to reach, you don't have balance. And that is true. But you can step outside of the DB's frame and still have balance if you do something called throwing your hip. So what throwing your hip is, and why I love this on a crossover move, is when you guys do this crossover, that first step has to be very explosive. You have to shoot that foot in the grass. So when you shoot that foot in the grass, that foot, it's not about selling. You don't have to step outside of his frame on that step, but that step is to give you explosion and energy so you can bring your hip and bring your upper body with this step. That is how you can step outside of his frame, but also maintain a knee bend, maintain an explosive spot so you can drive off of that release. So fellas, make sure that anytime you guys are doing a crossover, anytime you guys are doing any kind of cut, your body is attached to the foot. Your hip goes wherever the foot goes, because that allows us to sell, and that allows us to have balance and explosion that can drive you out of the break and not only get us separation, but I could accelerate and keep that separation from the DB. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. This is a great job by this wide receiver showcasing that crossover release, and that's why the first tip for us to run better routes today is going to be stepping outside that DB's frame on a press release. All right, so now, second thing that's going to help you guys become a better route runner when it comes to a double move, like a hitch and go, like a stop and go, come back and go, like dig and go, whatever it is, anything where you have to drop your hips, is you have to actually think about changing levels. So let's watch this full speed. This is Julio Jones running like kind of like this stop and go concept, or maybe like a come back and go to get this DB to drive, and we end up winning over the top. So let's talk about this. When you guys are running a route, especially like a hitch and go, stop and go, and this DB is in zone, how can we tell the DB's in zone? We could tell by his eyes, and we could tell by his stance, right? So pre-snap, I come off, I see that his stance is a little bit turned to the inside. His eyes are to the inside. So he's not exactly like looking at us, right? It's not like that press coverage look that we just saw where that guy's watching our hips, that guy's reading my body language. He's kind of got his eyes reading the quarterback a little bit, seeing what the number 2 does, seeing if anybody gets to his zone, right? So if I'm going to get him to crash on a double move, I really have to change speed. And that comes from a violent hip drop. And the reason why you wouldn't just want to slow down is because you also need explosion out of a break. Let me explain. So when Julio Jones gets up into this break, you see his eyes are in the backfield. He's not staring directly at him. So Julio, when he drops on this break, you see how low he gets. It's almost like he's sitting in a chair. He's dropping his pad level. Because when you guys drop your pad level like this, that brings you to slow down. When a DB's in zone, especially if he's in even a more exaggerated zone coverage look than this, where his front hip is almost facing you, I'm sure you guys have all seen that before, he's going off of feel. He's not looking at you. He can feel your speed. He's kind of looking at you out of the corner of his eye maybe, but he's going off of feel. So when he feels you change speed, and it's an abrupt change in speed, what do you think that's going to make him do? That's going to make him want to drive on this thing. Now, it's more than just changing speed, though. Because when you guys are doing a double move, like a hitch and go, come back and go, like I was saying, you do not only want to just drop quickly and get low, you want to slow down, but you also want to have some explosion to get you out. So when you guys are doing a double move, you have to make sure that you are changing levels to generate energy. So the change in levels will get the DB to crash. But we can all agree, you want to think of this break like almost like a 40-yard dash. When you're running a 40-yard dash, that first 5-yard space, you're trying to be as explosive as possible to give you acceleration for the next 35, 30 yards, right? So same thing on a break point. When I drop into a break, I don't want to just get low to slow down and then just pop back up. I want to get low to drive out of there. So you see when Julio Jones drops, yes, that gets the DB to crash, but he stays low. So when he goes to plant out of this break, he gets some explosion. He gets an extra burst and actually could keep his head down and widen the distance with this DB. DBs all the time, fellas, work on recovery speed. They work on recovering on certain routes. So for us to get separation, I need to make sure they don't recover. I need to get open, but I need to stay open. Now, another thing that's going to help you guys with that and being able to get low is focus on, like, you don't want to just like break, like so many guys, they think they could just slow down on this. They think that they could just chop their feet. That's not explosion, fellas. When you guys actually drop, you bring that chin to your knee, you're dropping your butt down. You're in such a powerful balanced position that if this DB even hesitates, we should get him by a step. So make sure, fellas, second thing that's going to help you run more crisp routes, be a better route runner, is you have to emphasize you dropping your butt down and being violent with your hips on double moves that involve a hip drop. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Julio Jones, changing levels, getting that DB to crash, and then being able to win over the top on that stutter go or come back and go, however you want to look at it. All right, so now, next route I want to talk about here is going to be a sluggo versus man coverage. So the main thing I want to get this point across, help you guys become a better route runner, is you got to know how to structure your routes. You have to know what works against what specific coverage. So a lot of times wide receivers can't do that. And you see a lot of wide receivers get away with it because, they were either just a dude in high school, maybe even sometimes occasionally in college when they're making that transition to the league. They're just bigger than everybody and faster than everybody so they can get away with poor technique. But that's not every single wide receiver. There are plenty of wide receivers that need to emphasize the details. You look at a guy like Cooper Kupp, didn't run the best 40 time. Hunter Renfrow didn't run the best 40 time. Jarvis Landry. Those guys have all been able to have success because they emphasize the details of their game. And I consider success being able to play in the league for a long time. That's impressive in itself. So you have to emphasize the details of route running. You have to know what works against specific coverages. So let's talk about this. This is going to be a sluggo route versus inside shade press. So he comes off here. He does this like diamond release, slips under, gets the DB to crash, and then is able to win on that sluggo. So let's talk about it. Why would he go with this move? Why wouldn't he attack him inside? Because that wouldn't work on an actual slant. If you're trying to run a double move, you have to make sure that it looks the exact same, right? You have to run the slant first. You have to run the actual initial move first. But if I don't do that, that DB knows. That DB can guess what we are doing. So if you were to run a regular slant, he'd be inside shade. I think everybody would tell me this answer. You would want to attack his outside shoulder. You would want to try to sell vertical with your pad level, vertical with your speed, vertical with your stride. You want to try to get him to open up and bail out of there. So if I get him to do that, I could slip back underneath and I could win on the slant. So if you're running a sluggo, why would you do anything different? You would have to do the exact same thing. Let's attack his shoulder. Let's slip back underneath because that's going to get him to overcommit. Maybe he's seen that before. I think every DB has gotten beaten on this a time or two. So that's going to make him over anxious to bite. And then I could slip back out on the go portion of this. That's textbook right there by this wide receiver. But you guys have to understand making your routes look the same, making the double moves look the exact same. That's what gets you open. So many wide receivers will force it. Anytime a DB is inside shade and he's a DB who's worth his stuff, like he's actually good, that guy's not going to give up the inside leverage. That's his sole purpose. So if you come off the line and your game plan is, oh, I'm going to attack him and then break in front of him and then run the sluggo, that ain't going to work. Because that DB, as soon as you attack him, what's he going to do? He's going to keep his leverage inside. Then you're going to run the slant right into him. He's not going to be threatened by it. Then you're going to go fade back out with the sluggo, and he's going to be right on your hip. If you want real separation, you have to run the slant first. Treat it like how you would actually run a slant, and that will get you open. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver showcasing the IQ behind route running and showcasing he knows how to actually run that route. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you'd like a full 2-month wide receiver on-field workout schedule, everything wide receivers need to do for route running, releases, the works, check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.